Welcome to the video on probability, complementary events, and expected outcomes. First, we have some key terms. A trial is one performance of an experiment. An outcome is a possible result of an experiment or trial. Equally likely outcomes are outcomes that have the same probability of happening. So if you're rolling a fair dice, rolling a 1 has the same probability as a 2 or 3. Or if you're flipping a coin, getting heads has the same probability as getting tails. Relative frequency is the frequency of one outcome divided by the total frequency. Our sample space, which is denoted by a capital letter U, is the set of all possible outcomes. So this can be shown in many ways, such as on a table or in a list. And then an event is an outcome or specified collection of outcomes. So our probability is the likelihood of something to happen. So the probability of an event A would be the number of times A happens out of the total number of things in the set. The complementary event to A is A prime, or also called not A, is equal to 1 minus the probability of A. Because you can either have it or you cannot have it. So that's why it's going to add up to 1. So for example, if we looked at our probability of drawing a king from a standard deck of cards, there are 4 kings out of a total 52 cards in a standard deck. So this would be 1 over 13. So our probability of a king is 1/13. Our probability of not king equals 1 minus the probability of a king. So that would be 12 over 13. Which makes sense because there's 48 cards that are not kings out of our 52 total cards. So that simplifies to 12 out of 13. So that's how you would do simple probability problems. Now we have our expected outcome. So that's going to be the probability of an event times the number of trials. So probability of an event A times the number of trials. So for example, it says the probability of rolling a 5 on a dice is 1 out of 6 because it's a 6-sided dice. If I roll a fair dice 24 times, how many times should I roll a 5? So our probability of rolling a 5 is 1 out of 6. And we'll multiply that by the number of times we're doing it. So 24. 24 and 6 simplify to 1 and 4. So you should theoretically roll a 5 4 times. This isn't going to happen every time. Sometimes you could get no 5s, sometimes you could get several 5s, but most likely you're going to get around 4 times because according to probability, you should get around 4. So here we have our first IB practice question, which is no calculator. It says Morgan has a bag with 1 blue, 3 red, 6 green, and 5 yellow marbles. She randomly grabs a marble. A, what's the probability that it's red? So if we look at how many marbles we have a total of 15 marbles. And up here it says there are 3 red. So it would be 3 out of 15, which simplifies to 1 out of 5. You can write your probability as a fraction, or you can write it as a decimal, which is 0.2. Then the next question is what's the probability that it's not red? So you could add up blue, green, and yellow to get 12 out of 15, which simplifies to 4/5, or you could just do 1 minus the probability of red, which would get you that same thing, 4/5, which is 0.8. Part C says if she draws 5 marbles, how many green ones should she expect to grab? So our probability of a green is 6 out of the 15, and she's drawing 5 marbles, so we'll multiply it by 5. Our 5 and 15 simplify to 3 and 1, so we get 6 over 3, which equals 2. So she can expect to grab 2 green marbles. Now we have our second IB practice question. It says a farmer measures the height of his tomato plants and corn stalks, then compiles the data in a table. One plant is chosen at random. What is the probability that a plant is A, a tomato? So we need to find the total number of tomatoes, so the probability of a tomato, out of the number total. So we have a total of 65 tomato plants and 85 corn stalks. So our overall total is going to be 150. So the probability of a tomato would be 65 out of 150. You can divide both by 5 to get 13 over 30. So our probability is 13 out of 30. The next question is what's the probability that the plant is taller than 60 centimeters? So those are going to be these two rows. So all of these plants are taller than 60 centimeters. So we can find the total of that, which is 12 plus 0 plus 2, so that's 26, out of our total, which is 150. You can divide both of those by 2 to get 13 out of 75. Finally, it says, what's the probability that the plant is a corn stalk that is shorter than 40 centimeters? So it has to be a corn stalk, so it has to be in the third column. And it has to be shorter than 40 centimeters. So that would be these two numbers. So it's going to be 25 out of our total 150. So that would be 1 out of 6. If the question had asked, what's the probability that a corn stalk is shorter than 40 centimeters? That would be 25 out of our total of corn stalks, which would be 85. And then you can divide those by 5 to get 5 over 17. So you need to pay attention to what it's asking you. If it's asking you out of the plants or out of the corn stalks or out of all of the tomato plants. So these are your answers to this question. So in summary, our key terms are a trial, which is one performance of an experiment, an outcome, which is a possible result of an experiment or trial, equally likely outcomes, which are outcomes that have the same probability of happening, relative frequency, which is the frequency of one outcome divided by the total frequency, sample space, which is the set of all possible outcomes, and an event, which is an outcome or specified collection of outcomes. The probability of event A is P of A equals the number of A over the number in the set. The complementary event to A, or A prime, or not A, is 1 minus the probability of A, and the expected outcome is the probability of the event times the number of trials. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching.